Just say the word and I'll start the recording.
That's great. Yeah, we can begin now. Thank you.
This meeting is being recorded.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, to the second day of our board meeting. I would like to reconvene the meeting and ask Jessica to, I think you have to call the roll to establish the quorum.
Dr. Bradbury? Ms. Laredo?
Here.
Dr. Noland? Dr. Nunez?
Here.
Ms. Prado? Dr. Solocito?
Here.
Ms. Buller? You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Well, first off on the agenda this morning is the board president report, and it's very short due to holidays, etc. But first of all, I'd like to say how honored I am to be, I think, the first public member to be elected as a president of our board. And while I realize that I have some challenges as a public member due to the fact that even after all these years, my knowledge of the Practice Act is not nearly as extensive or intimate as our professional members, excuse me, nor do I have day-to-day activity in veterinary practice in California like they do, although it seems lately that I am going to the vets at least every day with one animal or another the last few months. But I hope that my lifelong love of animals and my personal dedication to learning about their health and behavior, as well as being a very major consumer of veterinary services, and having a deep admiration for this profession, excuse me, excuse me as I cough here, deep admiration for this profession, and a commitment to fairness and collaboration and public protection and fulfilling the mission of the board will help balance things out. But bottom line is I'm going to do the best I can, and I really look forward to it, and know that with our dedicated and very engaged board and our incredibly wonderful and professional staff under the leadership of Jessica, that I'm looking forward to serving you. So again, thank you for your trust, and I hope to do a good job. As I said yesterday, excuse me, Judy Key, who's our third public member, and someone I've known personally in my other world for many years, needed to resign due to time commitments. And that's very unfortunate because Judy would have been a fabulous longtime member to the board. And she wrote a lovely letter to the board as well as to the pro tem, who was her appointing authority. And I realize how important it is to have a full complement of board members, and have been in touch with the pro tem's office to ask them to expedite a replacement so that we'll have our third public member as soon as possible. So hopefully by our next meeting, we will have that. But anyway, I wanted to thank Judy for her service. She takes everything to heart and wants to do everything to the best job she can. And she realized that her time was not going to allow her to, and she's that much of a professional that she just wanted to step away. Tomorrow, a couple of things. Tomorrow, I will be attending with Jessica virtually the CVMA Board of Governors meeting, and I look forward to that. And finally, coming up in February 22nd, DCA, who does a great job, I think, in these trainings, has a training for board presidents and vice presidents, and I plan to be on it, and hopefully Dr. Bradbury as well. I think it's February 22nd. And I've also said, since I live in Sacramento and I am readily available, I have told Jessica that I'm available to attend any meetings that she needs, and at almost any time. So I look forward to working with you. One other thing I meant to say yesterday at the end of the meeting, and I'll try and do this each time, is I really want to thank our moderators and the IT staff of DCA, Shelley, and without them, we could not do these meetings, which is so critical to public protection and to the profession. So just want to thank them. because I knew I'd forget at the end of the meeting today. Anyway, that's my very quick report. And now I'd like to turn it over to Jennifer for the RVT report.
I'm happy to start, but do we need to take public comment after yours?
Gosh, you're right. You're right. Thank you. I'm going to get this down someday. Yes, I think we do. So moderator, could you turn it over? There's no action items, but turn this over to the public. Thank you.
Moderator, I've opened that Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on this item, you can click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type comment into the text field, and submit that to our panelists. You can also utilize that hand raise feature by hovering over your name, clicking on the hand icon that appears next to your name. Just as a reminder, we will be allowing 2 minutes for public comments today. I will be providing a 30-second warning when your time is about to expire. When your time expires, I will mute your microphone after letting you know, move on to our next commenter, and I will be taking comments in the order that they are received. And I'm not seeing any requests for comment at this time. Would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
It is closed.
Thank you. And thank you, Jennifer, for that reminder. And now I'll turn it over to you for our RVT report. Thank you.
All right, good morning. Happy New Year, everyone. Just a warning, I'm having some strong winds here at home, and we've received a warning we might lose power. So if I go blank, that's what happened. My report is short as well, just some updates. I think you can look at our agenda for both the MDC and the VMB and see that we are addressing a lot of RVT issues. There's been a lot of progress. As far as the board representation, we're considering adding a second RVT. There is the issue of RVTs being paid to administer treatments that was discussed yesterday. Title protection for the veterinary technician specialists. We're discussing extended duties for RVT. So there's a lot going on in the RVT world here at the VMB. RVT issues have been front and center. So that's self-explanatory if you read through our agenda. Just some continuing business, staff shortages. We know that's occurring in every member of the veterinary team. Everybody's so busy right now. Everybody's, struggling with retention and burnout. So every member of the veterinary team out there, every hospital, every veterinarian, every RVT, every assistant, every receptionist, we see you guys. We really appreciate all of you. So great job to everybody who's been hanging in there on what has now become a trilogy of our pandemic. It's been ongoing. Just some things that I've been hearing, a lot of requests for distance learning for RVT programs. And while some courses may be feasible for that, we have to remember that for an AVMA approved program, there are hands-on skills, critical hands-on skills that have to be performed that cannot be performed virtually. There has to be face-to-face instruction. So I don't know that everybody understands that. So distance learning is very convenient, and obviously our meetings being virtual are very convenient, but we can't lower the standards as far as RVT education. Remembering that these are AVMA requirements, and while we're not going to regulate ourselves out of a staffing shortage, we have to keep in mind that there's a safety issue and there's a level that we have to hold to the standards. One last thing I do want to mention are some misconceptions. I've heard from a couple of concerned people. Sounds like there's a misconception that the VMB is trying to get rid of the alternate route. And I just want to clarify, as far as I know, there are no plans to get rid of the alternate route. That's a very useful program. We did several years back when I was new to the board vote to eliminate the ad hoc program, which was sort of another pathway to alternate route. It didn't have equivalency as far as courses and education. It was kind of a self-paced checklist that was necessary to sit for the exam. But we did hear some public comment, and there were some concerns about the number of hours, and that's all open for discussion. But as far as I know, there are no plans to eliminate the alternate route program. That would not be beneficial to the profession. So I did want to clear that up. And that's actually all I have. So does anybody have any questions or comments?
Dr. Nolan.
I have one, yes. Thank you very much, Jessica, and it's exciting to see lots of, I think, progress. I'm excited about that. I did want to just clarify my understanding of the concern is that I think that when we kind of redid those regulations, students lost the ability to earn their 2,000 hours or however many of the new hours are during education. We made it that they needed it before they started their RVT program. And I think we need to make sure we clear that up when those regs come back in front of us so that there is, because I understand the concern. I think some of these students have to, work while they're in school and they're working in a clinic and those hours ought to count, right? I mean, I think that's important. So I think that was my understanding of their concern that the wording sort of got lost.
I agree. I mentioned that yesterday is you have to be a Shakespeare expert to decipher some of this language. And I mean, I'm all for education. I think you can't replace education, but you also can't replace those hands-on skills. Those two go together. So I know some of the RVT programs have like an FAQ to answer questions about certain things. So maybe at some point we can add that to our plate of doing a little a Cliff's Notes version of our regulations just so that to clear it up for everybody.
Thank you. I think Dr. Nunez's hand.
Just have my usual question for Jennifer. How many committees are you currently on?
I'm down to double digits, so that's good.
Okay, good. Yeah, thanks for clearing up that point. I think it is hard. You need to be a Shakespearean scholar for sure to understand lots of the language that's used here. But I think most of the actions lately have been on making sure of the equivalency of educational requirements between the alternative route and accredited programs and so forth. But there's never been any discussion about eliminating it completely, for sure.
Dr. Nolan.
Yeah, I had a thought come to me when Mark was talking. I think way back when we were originally kind of talking about the alternate route, I think the intent, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the intent was those people in the profession that had been working in a vet clinic for many years and wanted to move forward and get their RVT licensure. But I think that the industry has evolved, and I think that if we still stick to that very narrow definition of alternate route, we miss out on a lot of these young people who may or may not have had years of experience in the industry, but who are really passionate about it and want to join the industry. So I don't mean to negate the original intent of the alternate route. I think it was originally for those that had already been in the industry, but I do think we need to broaden it so that other students with passion are allowed to enter.
Good point. Thank you. And Jennifer, thank you very much. And I realize, I know we'll open yours up to public comment, that I didn't ask the board if they had any questions or comments of me on my extensive report, but I assume you didn't. So now we'll open this up to public comment on the RVT report.
Again, open that Q&A panel. If you'd like to comment on this item, please utilize that Q&A feature by clicking on that Q&A icon, and typing comment into the text field and submitting that. Or you may also use the hand raise feature. Our first comment comes from Nancy Ehrlich. Nancy, I've sent a request to unmute your microphone.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify about the alternate route that when it was first created, obviously there were no alternate route programs. The only kind of way that someone could get the education was through the ad hoc pathway. But it was always the intention, and it was always the assumption that RVT programs, alternate route RVT programs, would eventually surface, and that once there were a sufficient number of alternate route programs, that the ad hoc route would go away. And that's exactly what this new regulation does. It eliminates the ad hoc pathway, but it approves alternate route programs, which makes it easier for both the candidates and the veterinary medical board, because looking through alternate route applications for ad hoc is very time consuming and difficult. So it's going to benefit everyone now that we have alternate route programs. And as far as the requirement to have the work experience before you start the program, I think that we should definitely reconsider that because as you point out, times have changed, and we need RVTs desperately. And anyone who really wants to be an RVT and is committed to learning what they need to know should be allowed to enter the alternate route program, just like they can enter an AVMA approved program without any work experience. So I think that I'm pleased that this is moving forward, but I do think that we need to reconsider the requiring so many work hours prior to entering the program.
Thank you. Our next comment comes from Anita Levy-Hudson. Anita, I've sent a request to unmute your microphone.
Allowing public comment on our issues. It's a very nice. We appreciate that. I just wanted to ask, because I anticipate receiving this question regarding the title protection for VTSs, and also it kind of goes along with some of the several of the other issues. I'm sure that I'm going to receive questions about what will be the consequence for someone to use that title incorrectly. You may not have, I understand you may not have the answer to this question right now, but I'm just kind of throwing it out there because it occurred to me this morning. That's really all I have was just that question right now. And thank you again, as always.
Thank you. And not seeing any other requests for comment at this time, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
We have one response to that. It's not an answer, but when we develop our FAQs, maybe that's something that could be included. I probably shouldn't say this on webcast, but I'm going to. When I had an emergency on a Sunday with my cat, I had to go to a hospital I'd never been to before. Amazing hospital, amazing doctors. One of my students was working there, and later when she was leaving, she took a picture and her tag said veterinary technician. I know darn well she was not an RVT. So I wondered how many of the others there were calling themselves technicians when they were not. And I've actually been to a lot of hospitals where that is the case. I don't think that normal hospitals outside of the regulatory world who attend every single one of these meetings understand the consequences. So maybe that's something that we could do with our outreach, is just explaining the importance of using correct titles and maybe the consequences.
Thank you, Jessica. Do you have anything on the title question by chance before we move on?
No.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. All right, well, thank you, Jennifer. Then we'll move on to the next set of reports, which are the National Association reports. And I will start with the International Council for Veterinary Assessment. Oh, does somebody?
Kathy, can I actually ask you if we could jump to agenda item 18A? We got a request from DCA budget team. They're short-staffed, and so we're having someone step in and give the report. So if that's okay with you, I'd like Tim to start the item by introducing the information that he provided and then turn it over to the budget team so they can go back to their office.
Absolutely. Please begin. Thank you.
I'm going to try and share my screen. Can you see the 18A administration report clearly?
Can you zoom in on a little bit on it and make it a little bigger, please?
Let's see if this will work. How is that? Bigger?
That's better. Thank you.
Okay. So as you can see on our report, we've had a lot of staff movement in our office. We hired behind our vacant receptionist on November 1st. The new position started, Rachel McCune. She came to us from the private sector as a preschool teacher. And then, as you know from yesterday, Justin Sotelo has separated from the state and accepted a position outside, and Jeffrey Olguin has taken over that position. I'm excited to work again with Jeff, as he came from the California Architects Board, which is where I had come from previously, and we had both worked with Justin. So I'm confident in Jeff's ability to step up and take over. And in early December as well, Rachel Adversello, who was our RVT licensing technician, accepted an internal process or internal promotion and will be moving over to our enforcement unit. And we have hired Brian Brahms from EDD to replace her, and he started on Tuesday this week. Our cashier is still out. However, due to the need and increased staff size of our office, I have begun the recruitment process to fill that position as a full-time position, because we desperately need that extra hand to handle all of our personnel and front desk duties. And for the last item on this quick update, we did have the BCP added as part of the governor's budget, which was released on January 10th. Hopefully everything will be passed and acceptable so we can get the funding for our limited term AGPA to help Jeff with our policy. And after that, I'd like to turn it over to Matt Nishimine. He'll be speaking from the budget office. We do have a new budget analyst, Veronica Hernandez, but Matt will be covering this topic for us.
Good morning. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Ms. Sieferman. My name is Matt Nishimini, and I am in the DCA budget office. I've actually presented in front of this board several years ago. I was your analyst, so I'm pretty familiar with this program, and I'm just stepping in because we're a little bit short-staffed today. As Tim just mentioned, and I'm just looking at this memo here, we can actually, if we can go down to the revenue report. So this is the current year, page 2, please. This is that blue chart on page 2. This is through fiscal month 5, and it's showing that year to date, we brought in about $3.4 million, and we're projected to bring in a little bit higher than what we had projected. Than what we had budgeted, and the budget. Okay, so the budget number of the 7,335, that was what we projected last fall, and that was sort of based upon the fee increases that were made permanent last year. So that's the 7,335. We brought in 3.4 year to date. And so we're actually on a run rate a little bit higher. We're going to bring in about 150,000 higher than what we had projected in the fall. So that's good news. And it's consistent with the regulatory package that we had that was made permanent last year. Moving down, we have a projection report on page 3. And so this is the expenditure report for the fiscal month 5 that is consistent with the revenue report, same period of time. We're looking more towards the right columns. The first 3 columns are prior year history. Those are in yellow. The middle column in yellow, that's your budgeted amount. If we look all the way to the bottom, your budgeted $7,006,000. Year to date, we brought in, you've spent about $2.5 million, and you're projected to spend about $5.6 million through the end of the year. So Jessica and her team are being very fiscally responsible, and they're coming in under budget by about 20%. So great job there. Do we have any questions on this projection report? I can certainly answer them now.
I actually have one, and there may be other board members that do. And thank you very much for coming and presenting today, particularly probably on short notice. Just a question, the current year revised budget for Attorney General, is 932,000. And is that that's just based on past usage? Because it looks like the projections throughout 21, 22 would end up being quite a bit less, potentially. Am I reading this right?
Yes. So the board over the last, so if we go back like maybe 5 years ago, the board's spending on AG was less. And as enforcement activities ramped up, your AG costs went up. And so that number that you're looking at there is pegged upon the historical allotments. To the extent you're coming in, so it looks like enforcement related activities may be on the decline, or at least going to the AG is on the decline. You're only going to be spending 377,000, so that you would be reverting about $500,000, 554,000.
I know, based on Jessica and the team's sort of retooling of our enforcement processes, that we are utilizing the Attorney General office in a more efficient way, and that's probably part majorly responsible for the lessening of the costs here. So thank you. I just wanted to confirm that. So that budget line item is just a placeholder, and hopefully we will come in quite a bit less.
Yes, and just to follow up, so that money allocated there is really dedicated to the AG. So we're not going to be able to put that elsewhere, reallocate those resources elsewhere. In the event that for some reason AG costs skyrocketed and that you did send more cases to the AG, the board does have the authority, along with the other healing arts boards, to request an augmentation, but that doesn't appear that that's going to be the case this year.
All right, so I was thinking about reverting it to something else if we didn't use it for the AG. So that is dedicated to AG use as according to the budget.
So yeah, and so that's really one of the ones that is one of the budget line items that is not allowed to be redirected. The other stuff, we really go to the bottom line, but we're really going to track those. Everyone tracks the AG costs pretty closely.
Okay, thank you. Now I see a lot of other hands, and I'm sorry I didn't see who was up first, but I'll ask Christina, Dr. Bradbury.
I don't think I was first, but I just was wondering, I think that that's the line item that would be used if for our other the other action that's going on against the board. So it's probably good that we have some money in reserve there anyway. So I think that's hard to predict at this point, but we'll hear an update later, I think. So is that correct? That's the line item we would use for the court case?
Yeah, that's correct. For any kind of involvement for the Attorney General's office would all come out of that line item. One thing I did want to clarify too, when you look at the current year revised budget column and it says the 932 number, just be careful not to do an apples to apples comparison when you're looking at actuals in the past, because that, again, that's just what we're budgeted for this year. That's not the actuals. And in the past, they're not showing the actuals of what was being budgeted for either. What was being budgeted for, they're actually just giving you the actuals that we spent. And if you may recall a few years back, the board has historically had to do some May revisions and done some late year budget revisions because we were over what was anticipated for the AG's budget for that line item. Fortunately, with all of the improvements that we've been making and the close contacts that we've had with the Attorney General's office, we have been able to reduce it significantly. We've also been able to reduce the amount of cases that have to have mandatory settlement conferences and just overall involvement with the Attorney General's office. And so I really just want to do a shout out to our DAG liaison and the Attorney General's office for working with us a lot to get those costs down and make sure that our cases are the best cases going forward.
Thank you. Dr. Nolan?
The report, and this, I apologize if you've answered this previously, or if I think we've had this discussion previously, but I'm just asking for more clarification. The facilities operations under the operating expense and equipment, is that like a one-time fee? So is that why, you know, most of it has been encumbered at this point in the fiscal year? I think that's the case, but I'm just not sure.
Right. So facility ops, that's your rent.
Mhm.
And so the allocation that's budgeted is what your rent is. So let's see, what do we have? 195, and you've year to date. Yeah. So they've pre. I guess you've probably paid more upfront. You probably won't be seeing that same run rate moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I see no little hands, no real hands. Okay, thank you. So I guess you can move on. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yep. Just to button it up, I mean, it seems like the spending is pretty consistent with the prior years. Certainly the years that Jessica has been the EO, it seems pretty consistent. So that's very good. Moving down, we have the fund condition statement beginning on page 5. And I just want to clarify this. In the upper left hand, it says the 21-22 Budget Act. So this is based on the Budget Act, but it also has prior year actuals, which isn't real clear on this document. And then the current year have been also updated with those FM5 numbers. So the prior year column is actuals, and the CY, the 21-22 year has been updated with the projected. So it should really be Budget Act with PY actuals and FM current year projections, just to clarify. Last year, moving down from top to bottom, for those of you who are not familiar with a fund condition statement, a fund condition statement is basically just a bank statement. It's a point in time document, and so it does change over time. If we look at the prior year revenues, so we're going to read this from top to bottom. You started with a fund balance of 2.7 million. You brought in 7.6 million in revenues in the prior year. And so that's great because that's consistent with what the regulatory package that was made permanent last year, which we projected. Moving down that PY column, last year you spent about $5 million with total outlays of 5.3 million, which left about 5 million in the fund. And then the bottom column, the bottom row, months in reserve, that 10.0, that represents if the board were to stop receiving any revenues. If revenues went to zero, then you could operate for 10 months based upon the remaining funds in the fund. So that 5.3 million or 5.032 million will begin. So if we go back up to the top of page 4 in the CY column, we see that there. We're estimating the 7.486 in revenues, and that's based upon the FM5 projection. And then moving down, for 11/11, that's the program expenditures. We have a 5599, which is a difference of about 5,000 from the projection document above. And so we learned that, so we have two different accounting, we have an accounting platform, it's called Qbert, and that report was used to generate this 5599, and then it was transferred over to that other document, which is above, so that's why there's a discrepancy of $5,000. I'm not sure where the $5,000 lays yet. I just discovered this last night. So it's $5,000, but I'm not sure where it's actually tagged. But we can figure that out and we can let Jessica know. All told, outlays are going to be about $6,058,000, and so you're going to have a fund balance of 6.46 million. Moving out to the right in the BY and the BY +1 columns, we're showing the revenues consistent. It's a little bit lower. Actually, I would think that 7.185 is a little bit low based upon the prior year actuals and then our current projection for the current year. I think that they're a bit low, probably a couple 100,000, but they're conservative. So we don't mind, being conservative. That's okay, especially with revenues. Moving down, we've got the 7.91 and 7.3. So that's fully expended. And we know that this board doesn't fully expend. If you were to fully expend, then we can see the months in reserve does go down. But to the extent, you guys are in that under $6 million range, you're bringing in revenues. Your revenues can still support the full cost of the board plus the other outlays hitting the fund. So very healthy fund condition statement. The board and the EO are doing a wonderful job managing this fund, and we have no concerns at this point.
Thank you. Open it to the board or questions at this point. Dr. Nolan.
Thank you very much. I guess this question is I don't know who it's for, but I do know that we have recently increased our fees, and I think it actually hit in the 2020-2021 year. But I know we're going to drop fees for RVTs, and it looks like we've only projected the renewal fees to drop by maybe 300,000. Is that, I would have thought, I guess, that by decreasing the RVT renewal fees, that income would have dropped more than that. But maybe I just was hoping that it would be more impactful on the RVTs. I don't know.
Yeah, so as you may recall from those discussions, we wanted to make sure that the fund itself wasn't directly impacted either when we were able to lower the RVT fees. So we were able, in the legislative proposal that we requested and got into the sunset bill, which is effective January 1, we did lower all the RVT fees, but in response to make up for that revenue that we were losing, we increased the fees for the veterinary premises registrations, and we added the VACSP fee as well and increased their renewal fees, because the VACSPs, as you may recall, in the initial fee increase package that we did, they were already at their statutory caps. And so this bill, the sunset bill, increased those caps and added an application fee for the VACSP. So the whole idea was to offset the revenue loss by increasing on those, while we can still at the same time decrease the fees for the RVTs. And if you recall from the prior discussions when this was happening, there was a lot of concerns that the increases that were happening across the board, it was more impactful for the RVT community. And so the board devoted to them that they would do everything that they could to decrease those fees as soon as we could in legislation, and then still make up for that loss in revenue by increasing the fees so it's more proportionally spread among our licensees.
But am I muted?
Yeah. No, you're fine.
But it doesn't look like they went up, Jessica. I mean, when you look at the other regulatory licenses and permits, there's not a big increase in those revenues. So it just seems interesting that. I don't know.
So I'll have to work with the budget team to find out more to make sure, because I was told that this is including the fee increases for the other licensees and the decreases for the RVTs, but we weren't anticipating much of a change in revenue because they kind of offset each other. Because the whole idea was to not impact our revenue at all. So we were hoping for minimal impact to the fund.
So maybe it's possible that they haven't included the increase in the permit fees in this. I don't know. Something to look at. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
We can certainly investigate that further. I'm not sure just right off the hand, so we would have to get back to you.
Okay, Dr. Nunez.
Just really quickly, in response to Dr. Nolan's observation on the revenue, the other possibility is that there's decreased licensees. I don't know if that's reflected in membership. Last time I checked, there wasn't, but that's a good place to start looking for your answer. Two things. Just going back up to the budget, I saw that there was an increase in overtime, which reflects how hard the staff is working with limited resources. So I take every opportunity I can to shout out to the staff. I wish you didn't have to work overtime. Thank you for being there. And
I just want to, sorry, Dr. News, thank you so much for that. I just wanted to clarify, though, that's not staff doing actual overtime. That is staff when they leave the board and they have quite a bit of vacation to pay out. That's where that line item would come from as well. So, well, I appreciate it because we do have staff who's getting time and a half, but that's not in there.
I'm still going to believe that you all are working very hard during these stressful times.
We are, for sure. Thanks.
So don't pop my balloon. The other thing is that it's sometimes difficult to be optimistic, but since the revenue does look a lot more optimistic, see, Madam President, you've inherited my good economy, so hopefully you don't take credit for it. Have we? I know that when the RUT fees went up, the discussion was that they would eventually go back down to where they originally were when all these fee increases started. Are they at those? I don't think they're back at the original levels yet, are they? And do we have room for? Is there thought about more fee reductions at this point?
I think that we went down to as far as we could go at that time while still not impacting the fund. But I mean, that's something that we can certainly look at and monitor to see if we can decrease fees. That would be amazing to decrease them for all of our licensees. But I just want to caution, like, it is good to be optimistic because we've worked really hard to write this fund. But it also doesn't include any additional staffing that we feel we may need. And so I do anticipate needing more staff, especially in enforcement and perhaps another policy analyst. So I just want to let you know that this is just a shot in time, but definitely something we're monitoring closely.
Yeah, that was my other thought of either that or increase in staff specifically or enforcement to try to work on that giant project, that giant case load we have.
Follow up. I would just note that the prior year, 2021, we had significant budget cuts due to the COVID-19 emergency. So we had furloughs and we had other cuts of about 10%. So the prior year expenditures is sort of artificially low on the natural because of those cuts. Moving forward, as Ms. Sieverman said, and Tim said, you guys do have that BCP. While it's general, you're getting a general fund loan to ramp up the program. Whenever you're ramping up a new program, actual costs may come in higher. And to the extent that, future costs are higher, then you may be fully expending your allotment. So you just kind of want to navigate as you go along. That's the purview of the board, right? And so you guys are doing your job, so that's great.
So in other words, Madam President is going to blow through the good economy I left her.
We're cautiously optimistic.
Thank you. Yeah, Matt, those are great points across the board. Thank you. I see that Bradbury, I see first, and then Dr. Nolan.
Thanks. I'm going to keep my my camera off due to the fun internet. Thanks for the report. I was looking at the revenues, transfers, and other adjustments in response to Dr. Nolan's question. And to me, it does look like everything's accounted for just because we really were, the fee increases that we made in the sunset bill were to offset the us being able to lower the RVT licenses, and it looks pretty equal, which would in that $300,000 might account for the difference that it ended up being. But the licenses and permits looks pretty equal to me, and the renewal fees were down a little bit, and so I think to me that looks accounted for. So maybe I'm reading it wrong, but it seems like it's balanced out quite nicely. And then just in response to Dr. Nunez, I love the optimism too. I think I'd like to just ride this out for a year and see how all of it kind of pans out before we talk about lowering any other fees. So that would be my thoughts on that.
Thank you, Dr. Bradbury. Dr. Nolan.
Governor's recent budgets and the surplus that we have in the state, has DCA been looking at trying to increase its permanent allocation from the budget? Has that been discussed, or anybody looking at that?
So the 40 or so boards and bureaus all have their own separate budget, and they're all special funded, and they're all gain their revenues from their individual licensees. And so as a whole, I would say costs have been going up for most of the programs. Your program is sort of an outlier in that you've kept your budgetary expenditures relatively flat. So I guess short answer is no. No and yes, right? So because each board is so independent and has their own constraints and priorities and policies and et cetera. So everyone is different, but generally speaking, no. And that's because the surplus is really a general fund surplus. It's not necessarily, like if I could show you some other boards where they are structurally imbalanced, where they need immediate fee increases, and they could be going insolvent next year. You guys are really in a nice spot where you have a nice healthy reserve balance so that you can make choices going into the future on what you want to do. If there are other policy decisions and priorities that this board and you board members want to undertake, you have some flexibility to do that. Or on the other hand, if you say, you know what, we're doing a great job as is, and we need to cut our fees amounts, you have the option to do that as well. So I think that we should just keep monitoring this. The fee increase went into effect last year, and then there were these other statutory impacts last year. Those impacts really take a good year or more to really see the results. And if you recall, we did the veterinary assistant registration a few years ago, maybe 6 years ago or so. And at that time, we thought that there was going to be this huge number of veterinary assistants signing up, and it was going to increase revenues by like 350,000, when it never really materialized. And so we don't really know, whenever you're starting a new program, what exactly is going to happen until we've had some time to analyze the data.
I appreciate that. And I think it was more of a philosophical question of licensees supporting their own consumer protection actions. I think there are other states that actually have support from the general fund to support consumer protection. And here in California, the licensees bear the brunt of that burden. And so I just wondered if there was any discussion about that ever changing. But again, that's probably way over our grade. So,
well, no. Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't answer your question. So, I would say this: that the general fund has never really supported DCA programs. Last year, there was some general fund monies that helped prop up some of the licensing programs, like Barber Cosmo received some general fund money because their licensees were all out of work and couldn't pay their licensing fees. This board is receiving a general fund loan to begin your BCP, and that is unheard of. I've never seen that happen. So to some extent, yes, you guys are kind of on the natural receiving some of the benefits to that surplus.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. I just hope, this is Kathy, I just hope as a board that given this positive fund condition, and we've been, as the time I've served, we've had a lot more negative fund conditions that we've reviewed. But I sure hope that as a board, we can do something with this money in terms of hiring staff to fulfill the mission and, utilize and think about utilizing doing two things at the same time, possibly lowering fees and also hiring more staff to fulfill our mission of licensing, efficient licensing and enforcement and things like that. And I know our staff is constantly in an uphill battle. So hopefully as a board, we can look at all the various possibilities. Given the fact that we understand that the last year was sort of an outlier and we don't want to blow Mark's surplus right away, but hopefully we can use the money in a structured and smart way so that we can do a better job as a board. Does anyone else have any more questions for Matt? And I'm not sure you're finished, and I see Mark's hand up.
Special funding that we got was specifically for the new blood bank regulation that we put into place, and that was truly unique. It was remarkable, and Jessica, we were promised extra funding, and Jessica made sure we got that extra funding, no matter what it took. And the last thing I would say is that I'm probably proposing decreased fees because I need to work on my legacy. Kathy, that's what I need to do at this point. That's my legacy.
All right, thank you. Matt, do you have anything else for your report? And before we open,
nothing else to add, but just want to let you guys know that my office is going to support this board in any way we can, and so please reach out to us if there's anything we can do.
thank you so much. Mark, your hand is up again, or it never went down?
Okay, thank you very much, Matt. I just have a couple other items.
Oh, perfect. Yes, Tim, I was just turning it back over to you. Okay.
Okay. So just a few more slight updates for you. We are switching to Microsoft Teams throughout the board and getting this, our incoming calls will all be directed to specific staff members and a call distribution through Teams rather than using the hard lines that our office currently employs. So this should really increase our customer service aspect with the board. And then with the wellness program, previously the diversion program, our next meeting is at the end of January, where we have one candidate in the program. And that is the end for this report for me.
Thank you. I just have one quick question before I open up to the board. How many current, and this is for you and Jessica, Tim, how many staff vacancies currently do we have? I know you've filled a bunch and there's somebody starting in the next week or so, but
let's see. I believe we have 4. I'm hiring a front cashier, and then there's a couple in enforcement, and our enforcement inspection has 1.
okay, thank you. Dr. Nolan.
Tim, I think in the past we've had org charts occasionally, and so there's so much change going on. I think as a board member, I would appreciate a kind of an updated org chart at some point, just to kind of wrap my head around all that. But if that's possible.
I think that's a great idea. We've hired more staff in enforcement, and we've merged enforcement and inspection. So it would be a good idea if we could do that for the next meeting.
Just don't show it to Jessica. It'll probably depress her to see all of it.
Yes, and I'm sorry, I think my 4 includes somebody who's going to be leaving shortly with the board.
Okay, so is that 5 then?
No, it's 4.
Okay, got it. Okay, well, I do want to commend you. The turnover of staff is always striking to me, even in before COVID times. But I really want to commend Jessica and your team. You have really filled vacancies very quickly and brought people in that are well knowledgeable of what we're trying to do as quickly as you can to fill these slots, and they're not open for months. So again, every staff person is critical, and I want to commend that because I've seen that you fill these slots much faster than I think we've filled them before. So congratulations. Any other questions for Tim on the administrative report? All right, I see nothing. So let's open it to public comment.
Open the Q&A panel. You also have that hand raise feature available. If you'd like to make a comment, you can either click on the hand icon to raise your hand, or click on that Q&A icon and type the word comment into the text box, submitting that to our panelists. Our first comment comes from Nancy Ehrlich. Nancy, I've sent a request to unmute your microphone. And just to confirm, I apologize, earlier, our comment limit today will be 3 minutes per person.
Hi, I just wanted to comment on the previous subject. I had an issue. The subject was brought up of a veterinary assistant wearing a name tag that said veterinary technician. It is currently illegal. We have title protection for veterinary technicians, so that person was already breaking the law. But as of January 1, 2023, thanks to the previous omnibus bill, all staff in the veterinary hospital will be required to wear name tags with their title, veterinary technician, or registered veterinary technician, veterinary assistant, or veterinary assistant controlled substance permit with their license number. So if we could just get some enforcement of this, that would be great, because this is a serious problem that, as you're well aware, that people are claiming to be veterinary technicians who are not. Thank you.
Thank you. And seeing no additional requests for comment, would you like me to close the panel?
Excuse me. Yes, please. Well, thank you then. Now, Jessica, I'll turn it to you to make sure you don't want to move any other reports up.
No, we can go back to agenda item 16.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So now we're to the National Association reports, involvement reports, and I will start. And again, mine is very short. As you all know, I have been the public member on the ICVA board for a number of years now, and am excited that I will become the incoming president of that board in June. But we have a short report, but I want to direct you to the examination and licensing report that we're going to get to next has several links to ICVA documents and reports that will much better summarize the activities than I can. So please look at those. We just had our board meeting last week. It was virtual, of course, again. And once again this year, due to COVID, obviously, both the spring and the fall testing windows for the NAVLE have been radically extended, and in order to accommodate as many students as possible and testing centers, etc. I do want to, and this goes for our staff as well, but I want to give a shout out to the ICVA staff, who, much like our own staff, have worked tirelessly throughout these last 2 years remotely and in unprecedented times, and they successfully have guided as many student candidates through the NAVLE process with all the delays, closures, etc., and tested as many veterinary students as they did before the pandemic. So I think that's terrific and very important, because at this time, the need for vets is greater than it ever has been. So I want to shout out to the ICVA staff. And that's really it for my ICVA report. Any questions from the board? See none, I don't think. So, all right, then I think we can open that to public comment.
This is the moderator. We've again opened the Q&A panel. You can click on that Q&A icon, type comment into the text field and submit that request, or you may raise your hand. Seeing no requests, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please. Thank you very much.
It is closed.
Thank you. Now I would like to turn it over to Dr. Nunez for a report on the AAVSB Member Services Think Tank Committee.
My report is probably going to be even shorter than yours. The AAVSB Members and Programs Think Tank Committee is a committee that pretty much evaluates all the programs and services that AAVSB does to ensure that they are meeting the needs of our members, and if some of them are not doing the job they're supposed to or no longer needed, then their existence may be evaluated. And on the other hand, if there's newer items that need to be delivered and all that. But we haven't had a meeting since the last time I reported, and with a new president, I don't even know if I'm still on the committee. The last communication I had was, are you still interested? Are you still on a board? And I responded yes to both, and haven't heard back. So nothing to report at this meeting. And we'll see. I'll let you know if I get appointed back on for next year. And that's it.
Thank you, Mark. Well, after our bylaw changes, who knows what they'll think about California.
Yeah.
But I thank you for that. Any questions for Dr. Nunez? Oh, Dr. Bradbury.
Hi. I think that you should be our representative still. I thought you did such a good job at the last meeting, Dr. Nunez, especially when we had to deal with the unusual presentation that was in front of us. So you were just so diplomatic with that, and I appreciated that. I wanted to, I don't know where the right place is to let veterinarians and RVTs know that there is a national sort of place through the AAVSB where we can put our CE in and have it be logged. For me, I just signed up for it. I think it's just a really nice way of being able to just have it all in one place. And I know we're working, Jessica has been sort of instrumental in having us be a big part of that program. So I just wanted to somehow let our stakeholders know that there's this kind of clearinghouse or repository for CE credits that make it really easy to keep track of all of that. So this is the only place I knew to bring that up.
Yeah, I think that program has the cutest name as well, where you can log all your race-approved CE hours, and the program is called Racetrack. Racetrack, it's cute.
Yes, and it is a very important program, and Jessica's got her hand raised, and I think it's a good time to talk a little bit about it.
Well, I was just going to provide a little more information too. It was in our newsletter that we sent out as well. There's a link in the newsletter. There's a section regarding the continuing education audits that we are doing, and more information on the Racetrack program, and then how to sign up and get your information through there is also in the newsletter. And I think the really big thing that I'm working with AAVSB to do is to allow the statutory approved non-race providers also provide their attendance through Racetrack. That's one thing that they're working on. I think it is helpful that there's a requirement, and I believe it's July or might be January of next year, but all providers will be all race approved providers will be required to provide their attendance directly to the race program, which makes it really easy for auditing purposes. I know that there's other states who are mandating that all of the licensees use Racetrack. I'm not for that at this point until and if the statutory approved providers can easily upload attendance records into RACE as well. So we're looking at alternatives to make it easy for statutory approved providers to provide either AAVSB the attendance records or directly to the board. But until that happens, I wouldn't recommend going down similar roads of other states right now. But it is a really great option for licensees to track their CE.
Jessica, and I'll get to you, Dr. Bradbury, again. Just a quick question. I think once the Racetrack process and system allows for all types of CE to be inputted and tracked, I think that will, don't we also hope that that will help us with an audit, in an auditing, as our auditing role for CE?
Yeah, absolutely. So in theory, if all of the providers are providing their attendance in Racetrack, it would essentially allow us to do 100% CE audit, and not really an audit. It's just looking to make sure that everybody has complied. But I don't just them providing the option to do that is good, but it also can't be overly burdensome to the statutorily approved providers either. So we don't want to make it overly burdensome to them, but we want to make it easy for the board and for the licensees to use. So we're trying to do all that, the balancing of that.
Okay, thank you. And I know you're highly involved in that, so that's great. Dr. Bradbury.
Yeah, Jessica, how do people track CE for these meetings? How is that something that they can do in Racetrack now, or?
What do you mean by these meetings?
I was under I believe that you can count these meetings as CE. Is that correct?
Our board meetings? No, that's not. But like AAVSB meetings, some of those conferences, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I just, whenever there's, so those are the non, oh, were they race approved, or they were non-statutory, right? So those, so meetings like that are the non-statutory things you're talking about.
Yeah, so we accept all race-approved continuing education, but there's also a statute that lists quite a few providers that have already had statutory approval to do it, and so they don't have to go through the process of being race-approved.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Nunez.
Believe it or not, I was around when CE first came to California, and those non-race approved organizations are they were grandfathered in when it was first started. So that's like CVMA, SCVMA, all the association meetings, even though they do provide CE that is race approved. That's what she's referring to. And we never did include the Veterinary Medical Board as being one of those organizations to provide CE. But if we did provide CE, then I suppose we'd have to quiz each other at the end of it to make sure that we retain some knowledge.
If the board did want to do continuing education or provide continuing education credit, we would be able to under the statute because we're a government entity. And so that's why we're looking at doing things like doing a law-related continuing education webinar and other things over this year that we're going to look at. So we will be hopefully rolling out some continuing education opportunities for our licensees.
Good. Dr. Bradbury? Oh, maybe not. Okay, accidental hand raise. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Nunez. I think if we're finished with questions for you, we can move this report to public comment as well.
Open that Q&A panel. You can click on that Q&A icon, type comment into the text field, and submit that to our panelists. You may also raise your hand. Not seeing any requests. Would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
It is closed.
Thank you. And before we move on to the next report, I just want to quickly apologize to a prior board member. What I thought, somebody had said that I might be the first public member, but I realize it's been brought to my attention that a friend of mine who I used to work with in the legislature, Linda Starr, was a public president of this board at one point. And so I definitely want to apologize for not recognizing her. All right. I don't think I have to open that up to public comment, right, Jessica? Hopefully.
No.
All right. Now we're going to go into the student liaison reports, and we have Mandy up first from the UCD. If you're ready to make your report.
Yes, ma'am, I'm ready.
Thank
Good morning, everyone. So after listening to Christina's report back in October, I realized that I did not introduce myself to the public. So really quickly, my name is Amanda Ayers. I am a first year at UC Davis, and I'll be tracking large animal with heavy equine rotations. Most of my experiences with horses, but I'm trying to branch out. I'm interested in working in government, so preferably like USDA, FDA. I really like traumatic wound care and nutrition. I think that's good enough. On to the student report. So based on what we were discussing yesterday, I wanted to start off with talking about UC Davis's response to access to care. So we have instituted a Spanish for veterinary professionals class that is available for students who have preliminary understanding of the Spanish language so that they can better communicate with some of our clients who come to the VMTH. And of course, when our students graduate and work elsewhere, they can communicate with Spanish-speaking clients, which is helpful. Especially because we were talking about how access to care isn't necessarily about distance traveled. It can also be communication. And then on top of that, I'm sure you guys are familiar, but we do participate in 3 different clinics, Knights Landing, Mercer, and Cavello. Unfortunately, because of the COVID pandemic, there have been less students who can participate in those. So they haven't been as successful as of recently, but hopefully those will kick back up as everyone is getting boosted. And in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, we actually had a first-year student start a chapter of the National Association of Asian Veterinary Medical Professionals. So that was really cool. That just started last week. And the great thing was we discussed this at length in our SAVMA meeting, but the cool thing was we talked about in our SAVMA meeting having a multicultural club for all different cultural identities. And the students almost unanimously agreed that that was going to be less preferable to having individual chapters of these organizations. And it proved to be true because a few days ago, we had an email sent out about starting a Latinx Vet Med, I think it's association. So that's going to be really awesome. So that should all start up here pretty soon. In terms of the UC Davis response to the COVID pandemic, I updated you guys on this last time, but since then we've started doing drive-through boosters. All students are required to have their booster done by January 31st in order to be considered vaccinated status. And The vet school is pretty much closed in terms of lectures, but we do have in-person labs with provided N95s and required symptom surveys. The undergraduate campus is completely closed and virtual. And our positive rate has risen from 0.06% from our last meeting in October up to 2.49%. So still below the national curve, however, quite a increase. So I also wanted to just mention, because of some of the public comments yesterday, and I know that some of those people are listening today, I went ahead and polled a few student groups, the Equine Medicine Club, and we call it FARM, but it's like Farm Animal Livestock Clubs, about who had considered participating in equine medicine and their reasons for not wanting to if they had changed their mind. So out of the 15 responses that I got in the last 24 hours, we had 93.3% of students had considered equine medicine in some form or fashion. 53.3% are still considering it. And out of that percentage, 26% completely said no, they're not considering it anymore, with about 26% saying maybe. And then I did ask whether or not they were considering field practice or racetrack medicine. It seems like only 9% had considered racetrack medicine, and about 60% wanted to go into field practice. Their reasons for going into equine medicine, as you could probably assume, is pretty much unanimously that they love horses, love outdoors, and like horse people. So that's nothing that can really be addressed by the CBMB. And then their primary concerns, whether they were considering it or not, were about lower salaries, work-life balance, which is an issue for all veterinary practices, long hours, and injury on the job. So I just wanted to shed some light on that in terms of why students might not be flocking to the equine profession after graduating. And I wanted to just open to the board really quickly. If you have any information that you would like from the student body, please feel free to just let me know. And before our next meeting, I can do a more in-depth survey so students have time to respond, especially considering fourth years who may or may not understand licensing procedures. So that is all I have.
Well, thank you, Mandy, and thank you for your initiative. That's very interesting on the equine practice, and thank you for taking the time to do that based on the comments yesterday. I'm sorry about the increase, the positivity rate increasing, and the fact that lectures are still virtual. I'm glad the clinical rotations are still going, but this is a very unfortunate time, and you guys are doing a great job given all the struggles. I will turn it over to the rest of the board for other questions, or maybe I should wait. I don't know what makes most sense, guys, and have Christina do her report. So we do questions for both student liaisons at the same time. Does that make sense? Yes, I'm seeing some nods. Okay. All right. Then why don't right now I'll turn this over to, excuse me, to our Western University, Christina Huygens. It's nice to see you.
So I wanted to just briefly update you guys kind of what's going on at Western. So originally coming back, our hopes were to be able to kind of ease us in to returning to fully in-person classes starting in February. We did our first week completely online, and then our plan was to do hybrid and then transition to fully in-person in February. Obviously, that plan has shifted a little bit given, you know, the current situation with the Omicron variant. And so now our plan is to extend that through the midterm at the least and reevaluate at that point. Hopefully we can have the curve under control by then. The university is now encouraging students to report COVID vaccine boosters to the university COVID response team as we continue into the spring semester. And again, just to kind of recap what hybrid is looking like for years 1 and 2, it's basically we're having anatomy and clinical skill labs in person, but all of the lectures that would be normally delivered in a lecture setting are being conducted online. So we are still getting some of that in-person instruction, which is nice. I did want to comment just kind of on what the student body has done to support each other as, again, we kind of continue through this hybrid situation during a pandemic, because I think that the student body has really shown a lot of resilience and effort to support each other. So we have things like Sabma Wellness Committee putting together, again, mindfulness sessions, and support during exams to include motivational notes to each other, and passing out self-care goodies. Essentially, it's the small things that count. And then our student body government continues to try to connect the class through various activities online and hybrid. And then this upcoming semester, we will be having our Honors Day, where we will recognize scholarship recipients as well as award recipients of various categories. And then there's a question mark on whether or not we will get to return to vet prom for the first time in I think 3 years now, and maybe get to have that if we're able to be in person. I did want to kind of comment about, clubs again, kind of making the most out of everything. And it's, what Mandy brought up about, diversity clubs. I found it very interesting that you're talking about starting the Latinx VMA at UC Davis. We actually started a LVMA club at Western last year. Some girls in my class got together and put that together. Yes. And they've been doing an amazing job, including even teaching some of the rest of us Spanish. So weekly, regarding our problem-based learning, they'll put together some Spanish language regarding whatever the case is that week. And then we also do have our race club, and they have been amazing and SCORE, and they've been amazing about putting together, various talks on diversity and how we can improve it in veterinary medicine. I found it really interesting yesterday as we were kind of talking about various things, including, access to care, kind of the demand on veterinary professionals right now, because I think that's something that is especially concerning to students. While there's an increased demand for veterinary professionals, which is great from us from a, career outlook standpoint, there's also a concern of when we're out in practice, is there going to be the support staff that we need to get the support we need as baby doctors. So again, I'm interested to see ways that we can try to improve that. And I did not put together a survey from yesterday like Mandy did, but I would like to second Mandy on the surveys and reports. If there are things that you guys are interested in and know specifically from the student body, I would also be happy to put together surveys and gather those reports to deliver at the next meeting. After yesterday, I had been considering, we were talking a lot about even with, the hemp reform potentially on the table. I think that's something of particular interest to us because obviously when we go out into practice, we want to know what the rules are. We want to know what we can and can't say and what we can do. So I've been considering maybe putting together some updates on current legislation and basically kind of a newsletter to share with the class with the board's support. So, but that's all I had for you today. If anybody has any questions.
Thank you. And I just want to say how I'm really thrilled that we added you liaisons to our board activities. It's so important. And actually, it's something we learned at an AAVSB conference where other boards had done this before, and we thought this is a great idea. So really excited, and thank you for your presentations and your continued involvement with our board. Let me turn it to Dr. Noland.
Thank you. I want to also repeat what Kathy said about what a great job you two are doing and how great it is to have you with us. I also wanted to make sure that we invite you to our next task force meeting. We're trying to pick a date right now, but really encourage you to come. And if you can't, perhaps find a colleague that can replace you so we have some student representation would be fantastic. And then also, this question, I guess, is for Jessica, but our new newsletter, which is great, can we get that to students? Is there a way we can actually use Mandy and Christina to help us get it to students, or maybe it's already going to students? I don't know.
So it went out to all of our subscribers. So if Mandy and Christina are on our subscribers, then they would have gotten it already. And if not, it's also on our website, and we post it on our social media pages as well. So But I think in the future too, I could make sure that Mandy and Christina are part of our subscribers as well.
And if there was a way they could, help us get it out to students, that would be fantastic, because I think most students aren't probably looking at our website routinely there. That's not in their radar, is my guess, but that would be great.
That's a great idea. Dr. Bradbury.
Hi guys, thank you so much. I'm really excited to have your guys' participation in the in our meetings and just on the board, and your enthusiasm for the profession, and just getting a sense of what's going on out there in both of these schools is super important to us. You offered help, so I'm on a subcommittee on the MDC for complaint review, and we're trying to put together sort of just a general reference list for our experts, and I would love it if we could get sort of a general textbook list of what resources you guys are using for learning at this point, because as a small animal internist, I have a pretty narrow view of what books to use, and I'm looking for everything from shelter medicine to exotics and equine, etc. So if that isn't too hard, that would be real helpful to us just to put that together. And thanks for all your work.
Dr. Nunez.
Christina, I'm not sure if they use books anymore. Everything's all online, I think. But super impressed with that poll you took, how based on the topics that were discussed yesterday and the instant response you got back, that's like getting polling numbers or Nielsen ratings. So after I'm off the board, maybe you can poll the board members and see how the numbers are on popularity. I'm just kidding. And Christina, don't feel bad. Mandy learned from something you did last time, and she learned from some, and vice versa. So we're all in this together. And last month, our last meeting, I was impressed that you guys stayed on for the whole meeting, even though it can get grueling near the end. So good job. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Dr. Salcedo.
Yes, I just wanted to echo, our appreciation to Mandy and Christina. Your participation is really appreciated. And I was just thinking about how the students could probably be a support for the access to care study that we're doing. Maybe polling the students on what they see out there, because they usually are the boots on the ground. They do preceptorships, internships, and all of these things that they may have the opportunity to really have those conversations with the practitioners and the public. So this might be a really good resource for the Access to Care Task Force. Thank you.
That is a very good point. Anyone else have questions for Mandy and Christina? And I will, Dr. Salcedo, your hand is still up, but no? Okay. And Mark, then I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, just to clarify that point that Dr. Salcedo made, I know that there's been talk at the board level about setting up programs for perhaps loan forgiveness in exchange for doing some work in underserved locations. I'm not sure if we've ever polled the student population to find out if they would even go for that. How many people would take advantage of something like that? So it would be good to know before we set something like that up, what their thoughts are on that.
That's a very good point. Thank you. And thank you again. Thank you for, we know how much you're studying and how difficult all of this is with COVID and how rigorous your schedules are. So thank you for sticking with us for the 2 days of our meetings. And if you can ever join the MDC meetings, which I know is an additional day or several hours, please don't hesitate to do that. I think we can open this up to public comment now. Thank you.
Operator, we've opened that Q&A panel. Again, if you'd like to comment, you can click on that Q&A icon on your screen, type comment into the text field, and submit that to our panelists. You may also locate that hand raise feature by hovering your mouse over your name and clicking on the small hand icon that will appear to the right of your name. And I'm not seeing any requests for comment. Would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
It is closed.
Now back to the administrator or the management reports. I think our next report is also from Timrata on examination and licensing. Unless, Jessica, you want to reshuffle these due to staff needs, but I'm just going to go with the schedule until you tell me otherwise.
Tim?
Thank you. And I'm going to share report. I hope it is nice and clear for you. Can everybody read this all right? Yes, excellent. So this is the examination report. As Ms. Bowler had said previously, we have a section on the ICVA who develops the NAVLE examination for our veterinarians, and they released a technical report, which is pretty interesting to read over. It's a psychometric analysis of the NAVLE, so you can see national statistics in that. And they did open their testing window and have extended it for the NAVLE in the coming months as well. Jessica had a meeting with the ICVA and AAVSB regarding our sunset bill and the changes we are making regarding licensure in California, how we're transitioning to an application once you've met all of our requirements for licensure rather than approval for examinations. And it looks like those talks are going well. The AAVSB has considered looking at our alternate route for VTNE candidates, although we are currently, board staff are still reviewing the alternate route applicants for approval and approving them for testing through the portal. Moving on to California State Board, it was last administered in December. And we did have some outstanding applicants who only had the CSB as a requirement to be eligible for licensure. Our staff have reached out to those applicants and waived the CSB as necessary so they can proceed with licensure, and that was met with positive response. At the time of the memo, 21 had already proceeded with their licensure, so we are seeing positive results. And I do know that many of our candidates were awaiting the removal of the state board and our related 3-day course for reciprocity to proceed with their licensure. So I kind of moved on to another portion of the board report a little bit later. Here's our examination statistics. The NAVLE we do not have the results for yet. That will be coming out, I believe, this week or next week. I should be getting some results to provide at the next meeting. And the VTNE, we do have the pass rates for the examination. However, we don't have the school breakdown for that to provide to you, and that will be updated once I have that information as well. And moving on to our licensing updates, our renewal requirements, we did implement a system-wide breeze change with our renewals. If a licensee renews and is missing part of their renewal, they will be notified. Right now it's implemented for fingerprints. If a licensee tries to renew and they are missing their fingerprints, which would hold up their renewal, they will get an email from the board saying, your renewal is held, we need your fingerprints and how to complete that process. We are constantly working with OAS to make an improved breeze processes. Right now, we are focused on implementing our sunset bill and the application changes that have been made. Right now, the fee increase and decrease, sorry, have been implemented, and that all of our renewal notices and renewals that take effect in January and later reflect that new dollar amount for our VACSPs, RVTs, and premises. And our applications will be changing in February with the February release. It'll be about mid-February for the new applications to go live. We have our performance measures here regarding our applications. Again, we've seen a decrease. I'm not surprised by that overall because we would have veterinarian applicants applying now if we still had our California State Board and we still approved testing in our previous way. However, we've informed candidates that with our sunset bill passing, once it becomes implemented, to wait until they have met our requirements for licensure and pay the required amount, the correct amount for licensure, and should speed up the process for that. Similarly with RVTs, the VTNE window fluctuates, so that dictates when we do receive RVT applications. And again, for our traditional path with AVMA RVT candidates, they would only apply to us once they've completed the VTNE, while only the non-standard or alternate path apply to us prior to that. And here you can see a comparison to last quarter and last year's. We included a new chart that shows the history of our applications received. This is going to be in flux, especially from 1819 through current, because we eliminated some applications the board used, such as the RVT application was consolidated from 2 applications to 1 in early 2019. And then, of course, with COVID hitting in 2020, that also affected our applications received. However, I'd also like to point out in the 1920, we received a very high number of RVT applications, and I believe that was mostly attributed to people applying with the board prior to our noticed fee increase for applications. So everybody wanted to get their applications in before they became the $350. And we did have an increase of pending veterinarian applications. Again, I believe that's due to elimination of the CSB and those applications just waiting to proceed once they are eligible. And similarly with our applications, we have a new chart and information regarding our licenses issued. This will fluctuate again monthly and quarterly based on when examinations are offered and licensure is eligible. The veterinarian information should change significantly in the future once we get data according to our new pathways for the veterinarian license, specifically removal of the 3-day course. So reciprocity candidates will be able to get licensed sooner and apply sooner, and our initial veterinarian applicants will be applying later in greater numbers. So the license numbers and percentages will highly fluctuate come graduation season, I'm anticipating. So as you can see, here's the number of licenses that have been issued per year, starting with fiscal year 17-18. We have seen slight fluctuations, but it seems to be trending upwards for all of our license types. And the DCA does have an interactive license data portal on their website now, in addition to what we provide below. And here is our license population with 3 years of history. And I'm open to any questions you have for me.
Thank you, Tim. And I just want to compliment you on this report. In writing this report, which is great, you you have anticipated some of our questions and answered them in the report, and it's very helpful. At least I thought it was. And I appreciate these new charts visually. They're very useful. I do have one general question. Which apps, because I know we have all the Breeze reports before, which applications are only available on Breeze and which are not? Because I thought everything was only, I thought mostly everything was online, but I still see a lot of paper applications.
We do, all of our paper applications have been removed from our website. We have people who may have copies of old applications mailing them to us. And we are occasionally contacted by licensees and candidates who do not have internet access and will require a paper application. So we accommodate them as well.
All right, that makes sense then. And the other thing I wanted to say is that I'm really pleased that we're giving refunds to the individuals that now don't have to take the CVE course or test, and because that's the right thing to do, and I'm sure they're very appreciative of it. Let me turn it over to Jennifer Laredo, who's had her hand up.
Thank you. One question is for Tim. You had mentioned under the VT&E scores that the breakdown by school was not available, and I see there's a link there, but it says that it's through September 30th, so I think I answered my own question as to whether or not that was updated. So is that something that's going to be updated at some point? Okay.
Yes,
and then
we'll be updating that once I believe it's AAVSP lets us know that that data is available.
Okay, thank you. And then this next question / comment is for the board. Even with that data that is not exactly updated, I saw two trends. One, that the pass rates had the national pass rate, not just for California, was down to 49%, which is really concerning. But we're in a pandemic. I almost feel like this should have an asterisk next to it, that this is like the most challenging time in history for anybody to do anything. And the other is that with the breakdown of the schools, there were fewer candidates even attempting, whether or not they were passing, fewer candidates. There were 3 schools that did not have any candidates at all take the exam. So I just wanted to point out that any school who was able to get RVT candidates through in order to take that test should really commend themselves. I know the programs were shut down. It was nearly impossible to offer courses. And any candidate, even if it was just one who passed, should really be proud of themselves, because this, again, it's such a challenging time. Especially, I teach at a community college, and some people take the bus to go to class, and I'm very fortunate. I teach most of the equine courses, so my courses are outdoors. I feel very safe going to school, but I can't imagine the uncertainty of being in the middle of a pandemic and having to go sit in a classroom filled with other people. To even get this far to attempt the exam, whether or not they passed, is such an accomplishment. So they should really commend themselves. But I still feel like we should have some sort of an asterisk, thinking in baseball terms. The Houston Astros were caught cheating, so their World Series now has an asterisk next to it. There should be something here to just show that this was probably not typical. This was atypical data because of the challenges of the pandemic. I don't know how the rest of the board feels about that, but that was my comment.
Thank you.
Dr. Salcito.
I guess my question here is for foreign graduates. I know the pathway for foreign graduates to get a California license, they technically have to apply to get into the ECFEG program through a like an out-of-state program first. And then after they've completed their requirements, that's the only time that they'll be able to apply to California. I'm just thinking, if we're looking at the population of licensees and with the shortage that the state is having with practitioners, is this something that we are kind of looking into on how to make it a little easier for foreign graduates to directly just, sign up with the California system and just go through with it? I'm saying this because I have known several foreign graduates that had to apply either in New York or Arizona, and end up getting offers in those states after they've completed their requirements. And even if their initial intention was to come to California, because it just facilitates the process, they end up staying in those states. So it's just a thought. And I wanted to ask, is this something that we're kind of looking into, or are the foreign graduates just lumped into like out-of-state applicants?
So I'll answer that for Tim. The board's not looking at that right now, because right now we do have a pathway for those foreign graduates to become licensed, and to change that would require legislative change. So that would be something that if you want the board to start looking at, that they can do, but there's nothing for the staff to do at this point until statutes change.
Understood. Thank you.
Dr. Nunez.
Jennifer, I never pay any attention to any sports statistics, so I'm not sure the value of those. How long has that interactive data portal been available? Because I just clicked on it and it's pretty cool. That's a really neat tool. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it is really cool. It's been the one that we provided the link to. It was recently launched, and that's why it only has one quarter of data. But there's been similar data portal like that that breaks it up by prior fiscal year, based on the annual reports that the board submit each year. That's been available, I think, for a couple years. I think when it first launched, it was part of our outreach memo to the board members. But it's definitely something to look at. It's something that the legislature looks at often when they try to identify some trends. And I think it's definitely something that not only the board, but the stakeholders should take a look at too, and it holds everybody accountable as well.
Yeah, and then the last question I had with the elimination of the state board for the RVTs, has there been, I'm not sure if you have any data on it, increase in the amount of ineligible applications? Sometimes I think there may be some confusion as far as what still is required to get your RVT license. Have we seen an increase in applications rejected because they don't meet all the requirements?
I don't believe so, but I'm happy to take that back to my team and look at the trends, but I haven't heard of any of that.
Issue of RVT applicants taking the state board in another state and then trying to use reciprocity laws to get licensed in California.
So when you brought that to our attention, I put my team on notice to keep an eye out for that, but we didn't see that really transpire. And now with the Sunset Bill, it's very clear the requirements to become licensed as an RVT. So we'll keep tracking it, and if we do see like a significant increase or any kind of increase, we can bring that back and let you guys know at the next meeting too.
Okay, because you need more than just passing the national boards to get an RVT license.
Yes. And I also just want to add to that, the only applications that would be rejected would be the alternate routes whose education has expired for our regulations.
Which is also something in the pipeline to change. We're going to remove that expiration. The board's approved that already.
Yep.
Yeah, there are some states that don't have the same educational requirements in order to be eligible to sit for the board. So that was the strategy that was being used to take the nationals in another state that had lower educational requirements, then take that past national, get an RVT license in that other state, and then try to get an RVT license in California via reciprocity. And I don't think that would work. But if you're not seeing it, then you're not seeing it.
But you're right, that wouldn't work, especially with the change to the Sunset Bill. So the change in the Sunset Bill, that loophole that or what they call the loophole, is not actually for California.
Okay, I don't see any other hands. I did have one other question. Actually, it was brought to me by a member of the ICVA board who is a bovine practitioner from the Central Valley. And when we were talking about the CSBE course not being required anymore in California, he asked about the reciprocity course on unique diseases in this region, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember we discussed all of that when we had the full study done on the NAVLE and the redundancy, et cetera, et cetera. But one thing he had, because he thinks it's a very good course, and wondered if we would consider offering it as a CE, maintaining it as a CE, and offering it a couple of times a year for those that would want to take it. So I don't know if that's appropriate, but I wanted to bring it up here since we talked a little bit about the abolishment of the requirement for the CSBE. So
that course we actually didn't offer. That was done by Western and CVMA, and I know that with the requirement going away, as you might remember, CVMA had expressed that with it going away, they will likely not offer that course any longer because it was no longer beneficial, and it's a pretty extensive course to put on. It takes a lot of resources to do. So I wouldn't recommend that something that the board then take on without additional resources to do.
Got it. I know it was at least a 2 or 3 day course, et cetera. So I just wanted to bring it up. Anyway, I think we can open this part of the report to public comment if we have no more questions from the board.
Again, open the Q&A panel. If you'd like to comment on this item, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type comment into the text field, and submit that to our panelists. You may also utilize WebEx's hand raise feature by clicking on the small hand icon that appears next to your name. And I'm not seeing any requests for comment. Would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
Thank you. And I know we've been going for quite a bit while. We're almost finished, I think, with the major items on this morning's session, but perhaps we could take a 10-minute bio break for a few minutes before the next reports, if that's amenable. All right, I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up. All right, thank you very much. See you back here. I don't even know what time it is. So at 11, how about 7 minutes, or 11:03? How about that? Thank you. Checking to see. I think it's 11:03, so hopefully board members will all be back soon.
This meeting is being recorded.
Thank you. I just want to confirm you're there as well before I start. Reopen the meeting.
I'm here.
Okay, cool. Hello, Tara. Hi, everybody. Well, thank you. A good break. Now we're going to move into the enforcement report, and I think that's going to be Rob Stephanopoulos and his team. I think that's next. Matt McKinney and Patty Rodriguez. So welcome.
Hi, good morning. I don't know that I can share the report.
Back for just a minute. Patty, do you need the presenter role to be able to share your screen?
Yes.
Okay, stand by. Right, you should have it now.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Okay, can everybody see that? Can everyone see the screen?
Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Just presenting today's enforcement report. I just want to go over a few things before I turn it over to Matt. During our last board meeting, we had reported that we were finalizing the merger of inspection and enforcement, and I'm here to report that as of December 17th, all of everything has been finalized, and we got the official approval from Human Resources, our HR department, that everything has been finalized. Duty statements were distributed to the former inspection analysts, so they reviewed them and signed those, and so that merger is now complete. And part of that process was to redistribute all of the pending cases between all of the analysts, the incoming inspection analysts, as well as the enforcement analysts. So Matt will go over that in more detail in just a minute. To just continue on with the staff update, we have a couple new faces, and that is Jeff Wheeler. He is the new probation monitor under Matt's team, and he comes to us with an extensive background in investigations that he gained while at the Elk Grove Police Department, as well as the El Dorado County Code Enforcement Department. And also reporting that Ms. Terry Perry, who was with us for many years, accepted a promotional opportunity at the Department of Industrial Relations. So we're happy to see her move forward in her career. And so we thank her for all the work that she did for the board as an enforcement technician. So we did conduct some interviews last month, and we're still in the process of obtaining her replacement. And so hopefully we'll have that happening here very soon. We want to get that position filled as soon as possible. Another analyst in the enforcement unit also accepted another position, and that was Miss Jennifer Lee, and she wasn't with us too long, but she accepted an appointment with the state CalSTARS. So teacher's retirement, and so her last day was at the end of November. So we wish her the best as well. And we're also in the process of backfilling her position. So we hope to be able to select a candidate here by the end of the month and get that position filled as well. And with the promotion of Kim Phillips-Francis to enforcement analyst a couple months ago, her vacated position was filled by Miss Rachel Adversalo, who was one of Tim's team members in licensing and admin. So she is keeping up with her licensing duties, and then she's also training in her new enforcement duties as a probation technician. So we're expecting to be able to make that, for her to make that full transition over to enforcement, as we just backfilled her position. So that transition will be finalized here shortly. And and as we mentioned before, the few positions that we do have vacant, and we expect another one to be coming up here soon. We plan on filling all those as soon as possible. Moving on to inspections, we just continue to focus on follow-up inspections as the enforcement analysts are starting to work these cases that involve inspections, and if those are outdated, then we send the inspector out to do a follow-up inspection, and those are having a pretty quick turnaround time. And those continue to be the priority. We're having the inspectors do the medical record review as well as the inspection itself. So we're experiencing faster turnaround times on those, which is great. So with that, I'll turn it over to Matt, and he will go over the rest of the enforcement report.
Thanks, Patty. Do you mind scrolling down a little bit on the?
Yes, we can do that.
See where we're at. So yeah, hi board members. Nice to see you all today. I just wanted to kind of touch base on a few things as well that were going on in enforcement over the last quarter, I guess, quarter two of FY 21-22. As Patty mentioned, Terry departed the board, and she had been very experienced in intake. So with Terry departing and an increase in the number of Public Records Act requests we've been receiving lately, especially related to the horse racing cases and things of that nature, we've experienced some increases in intake cycle times. So typically the probation technician will be able to help out intake during those kind of situations. But since Rachel Adversalo is still in the transitory position, which she hasn't really been able to, but she is training there. And we've also requisitioned two prior enforcement technicians of the board who are still working with the board as analysts to kind of help out trying to help out to get that backlog down intermittently. Earlier, Patty mentioned the Redistribution Project that we worked on. And so that was kind of a really interesting thing for us. Basically, we had, with the new enforcement tech analysts that were hired from the budget change proposal in 2020, we doubled our enforcement staff. And then with the inspections and enforcement merger occurring, we almost, increased it again by 50% to triple from the original number. So with that, we noticed that there was some disparities in the number of cases that were assigned to the analysts, where some would have upwards of 500 and others might only have a few since they were newer. So we thought it was a good opportunity to take the time to have the cases redistributed evenly to all the analysts, which averaged around 243 cases each. And during that time, the analysts were also able to review the allegations in the complaints to determine if anything needed to be triaged or if we had any issues that were maybe not something that the board could do anything about. And that gave us opportunities to just kind of really understand what was in our pending caseload a bit more, which I think was something that was really beneficial, since with the upwards of 3,000 pending cases we've had, it's sometimes you're just wondering what's getting lost in the mix. So we feel like we have a better comprehensive view of all those things now. And another thing that happened with that I just wanted to report on was when I was looking through the pending caseloads, we noticed that there was a number of cases that were on the board's pending report that actually had closure codes on them. So there's some coding errors that had, or I guess just maybe errors is the best word, but they're just coding issues in Breeze where the cases hadn't been closed properly. And so we've taken the opportunity to close those cases, but just by adjusting the codes there. And that was approximately, I want to say, 172 cases that were affected by that. So it's good to report that those cases are no longer showing on the board's pending report. And we also took the opportunity just to make sure that the staff's all kind of updated on Breeze activity codes and how they function and just what we need to do to make sure that cases are being accurately reported, because the way the reports run, they basically come out with what information we put in there is kind of what the reports spit out. So when the cases, even with the closure codes, they report as closing, but then if they still have the investigation cycle code as open on them, for instance, that would still show up on the pending report. So with the increase in staff, we've taken opportunities also to increase the number of team meetings that we have with the whole team, just to go over those kind of things and make sure that everyone's kind of on the same page and up to date on what the proper procedures are for those kind of things. Similarly to that, with the probation unit, we've been working closely with the Breeze reports team so that we can have kind of a one-click report where we get all the number of probationers currently, who's tolling, who's on biological fluid testing requirements, those kind of things. We've been tracking that kind of manually in the past, and it was another issue where over the last week, I'm happy to report that I was able to resolve many of those inaccuracies just because the coding on some of the probation cases wasn't done consistently. And so now the probation team we've all gone over that as well, just making sure everything's coded correctly so we get those report numbers accurately when we do run those reports. And now we've been seeing the results of that with having the latest reports we received from the team matching what our numbers show that we've been tracking internally. So it's really good for us. We're just continuing to make sure that those things are done properly and everyone knows how to work Breeze in the best way they can. I think for me, what I would attribute a lot of that to is that we're trying to tackle the bigger issue of the cases. And I think sometimes the nuances get lost in the in the wayside. So we're just trying to make sure that the foundation's there going forward, and it's provided us positive results. In addition to that, we're still working with our DAG liaison, Karen Denver, to develop an expert witness training program. We anticipate that occurring the first half of 2022. And just a few other things with the Attorney General's office, we noticed that there were increased cycle times, and that we believe that was due to the board's focus on investigating our oldest cases, which are usually the more complex cases in nature and just take a longer to close. Lastly, we have just some information for you on the status of the pending lawsuit from the SPCA against Ms. Sieberman, just with some updates on the numbers that we've seen through November 2021. So with that, I'd like to open it up to anyone who has questions or comments for myself, Patty, or Rob.
Before we do, I just wanted to really commend Matt for being able to catch that coding error that was occurring when it comes to close. I think he kind of glossed over that and gave the credit to his team, which I think is deserved. But I was really, really happy with Matt taking that initiative when they were doing that redistribution and recognizing that there are a number of cases that he had approved for closure that weren't showing up on the stats. And that's what really was the catalyst to running all the data and finding out how many more are also not showing up correctly. And so just with that initiative, we were able to, like he said, close up to close to 200 cases that were showing pending that weren't truly pending. So I just wanted to commend Matt for finding that.
Thank you, Jessica.
Team, I had a couple of questions, and then I'll go to everyone. Once again, the turnover, it's just so amazing that you guys are doing the job you're doing given the turnover, and thank you very much for that. It's overwhelming and somewhat disheartening to me to see that we're on course to have about 1,800 complaints again this year, and I realize that you are all doing the best you can, and so I really appreciate that. I have one question on the expert witness training. I know it's coming up. You said, do we have a date for that, and can board members attend that? Because I think that's very important, and I'd be very interested, and I know some others probably will want to attend as well. I assume it's virtual, but I don't know.
We don't have a date just yet. Karen actually sent the finalized presentation back to me, so I just need to coordinate with Dr. Sequoia and Dr. Bradbury as well as Karen to nail down a date, and then as well as our experts. And I believe that when we spoke during the last board meeting, Karen said that would be totally fine to have board members go. So we'll definitely let you know when it is scheduled, and hopefully I think it will be really useful for our experts.
Hopefully that's great. Thank you. And then I just had looking at the statistics, it jumped out at me, and if I'm reading this correctly, so in fiscal year 1920 and 21 and 2021, we had about 60 or 68 unlicensed activity complaints, and we're already we're only through a short period of this fiscal year. We've got 65, and is that correct? That seems high to me, or compared to the prior years, and I just wondered if that's a trend that maybe if other health boards are getting those kinds of complaints as well, or what's going on that.
I don't know offhand if other health boards or healing art boards are dealing with the same unlicensed activity influx, but I know that we noticed this during the last board meeting, and it seemed like there was an interesting trend. I think Jessica mentioned that we were basically going to double the amount that we would normally get. Obviously, December's a little different. The numbers aren't going to be there yet because we had a backlog in intake, which we're taking care of right now. But we'll have to see how the remainder of fiscal year 21-22 pans out. I don't know whether or not it will go down back to, around 5 or 6 per month, or whether it'll stay at, around a dozen a month, and basically double our unlicensed complaints. I can't think of a specific reason for those increasing offhand. I don't know if anybody else has any ideas, but
I could offer a suggestion for that, Rob, if you don't mind. I think one of the things that maybe attributes to that a little bit is when we're reviewing the cases that we have had pending against one person, and perhaps an expert report is entailed there, and we'll notice in reviewing that expert report that there are other people involved in the case that might not have be licensed for the kind of services they were providing, and that would for us that would be a reason why we'd open an unlicensed complaint, just so we could look into that further and make sure that nothing untoward has happened. So I don't think it's all necessarily just being driven by consumers as much as board staff trying to be really thorough with whatever they're investigating and make sure that there is no, even if it wasn't something that was alleged in the initial complaint, making sure that nothing untoward was going on that we might want to look more into.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had. Dr. Bradbury, sorry.
All big claps. Thank you so much, you guys. You're doing, I know this is like hard work, and it feels like for the first time in a long time, there's like positive momentum, like pushing forward and not just trying to continue to dig out. And some of the things that really stood out on this for me were in the inspections, the cycle turnaround time. Patty, thank you for leading the merger and for all the hard work you've done. But it looks like that's starting to kind of get some momentum but we've been kind of lacking with the pandemic. So nice job there. And then to the enforcement team and Matt and Rob, I've been working with you peripherally, Matt, because I haven't actually talked to you, but heard a lot about you, and you guys are really steering it in the right direction. I was so happy to see that that in the November to December, we had more cases closed than received, which I think is a first since I've been on the board. So nice job there, and nice job finding that that coding error. One thing I just wondered about was whether, since kind of having that kind of review is really helpful, if maybe we do that biannually or annually. I know it takes a lot of time, but it kind of, with all of the turnover, it may make sense. It depends if we continue to have turnover, but seems like that is a common, just something that we have to live with. If maybe we just, plan on doing it, maybe won't be as big of a job if we're doing it kind of on a semi-annual basis or something to make sure these things aren't falling through the cracks. I just want to say thank you. I'm really excited about the direction of things, and that you guys are getting the help you need, and it's not 700 cases per analyst now. I mean, it's 243 or 47 is still too many, really, but it's at least a more manageable number. So thank you. Good job.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for that question, Dr. Bradbury. I think that we're trying to be more proactive actually than that. So what we've been doing for the last few months since the redistribution and noticing those errors is midway through the month, we'll run the report and we'll send it to the analysts and have them look, and because you can really tell, when if there's a case that's showing against, like, pending for a person that should be closed, or they look at the cases that they have closed in that report and see if anything's missing, and that's an opportunity we have right there to go back and adjust it. And we're trying not to get to a point where we have so many cases that would have those issues going forward. So we're trying to catch them on a monthly basis now as much as possible. And it's not like it's unchallenging, but I don't think it's overwhelmingly challenging, because, like I said, we can just look at the pending case report and see what the last activity code that was put on a case was, and if that activity code isn't matching up with with what we think it should be, then that's kind of giving us triggering us to go look into the case and see what happened there and why it's not showing up as it should be. So yeah, we're being proactive with that.
Thank you. And agreed, you guys have so much changed and improved the efficiency of the enforcement and the inspection operations, and even in consideration of the heavy complaint load, you've made great strides, and we are all watching and appreciating it. That's for sure. Dr. Nunez.
So good find on that pending or closed case thing. Matt, it reminds me of Trump calling the Georgia Secretary of State saying, I just need you to find 3,000 more cases that can be closed. But I want to know if I'm reading this correctly, and if so, it's more reason to be optimistic. When you go into the column, all types of investigations and fiscal year, we're more than halfway through, or about halfway through our fiscal year. And when you look under pending complaints and investigations for 2019, 2020, it was 2,400. And the next year it went up about 1,100 to 3,500, which was a pretty bad upward trend. But year to date, halfway through the market's only gone up 200 pending cases. So that's good, right? I'm reading that correctly, aren't I?
Definitely, yeah. Since we've gotten the extra staff, I think that's been really, really helpful in slowing down that increase, because you mentioned it went up 1,100 between 1920 and 2021. And I believe 1819 to 1920, it probably went up around the same as well. So it's been really, really shooting up. And this is the first time that it's not leveled off yet. But based on the last quarter, if we continue that way, then it will level off, and then we'll start to cut into these this backlog.
That's a pretty, well, who knows what the second half of the year will bring, but that so far is looking promising. Another gift that I give to Kathy, President Bowler. Just kidding. And then the complaints received, even though that's still trending as high as it always has. I don't know if we have any statistics on the COVID complaints, like just people getting frustrated and there being an increase in complaints just because they have to wait in the parking lot longer or things like that. And maybe many of those complaints are going to be just people venting.
We do track the COVID complaints. I don't know if it's on the pie chart. It might be factored under other. The reality of a lot of the complaints that we get when it comes to somebody who's just maybe upset because of something that has to do with COVID is a lot of times they'll throw something else in there. You see the minimum standards record keeping, that percentage has gone up pretty, I think it's gone up 3 times. But I think a lot of times they get frustrated and they throw into their complaint, yeah, this person was really rude, which would be non-jurisdictional. And then they say, and the facility was a mess. It was, it was disgusting. It was dirty. And all of a sudden that complaint becomes jurisdictional because they're alleging that there's a minimum standard that's not being met. So we automatically can't close that non-jurisdictional because there's a concern about the facility. So I think that the two are definitely related.
And the last thing I would say is that, we read every month about staff turnover and so forth, but I would like for the board to acknowledge that the longest serving member on our staff is Patty Rodriguez. She's been here, I think, ever since I've been on the board, and that you've been with us through thick and through thin. And I appreciate you and value you're a tremendous asset to our board, and hopefully you like us, and that's the reason why you're staying. But I'm glad you're here, and you've done a tremendous job over the years.
Thank you. Nobody else wants me, so.
I'm sure that's not true.
Y'all are stuck with me.
And you look the exact same as you did 8 years ago when I first came on.
Thank you.
Else? Questions for the enforcement report? Dr. Nunez, hand is still up, but I'm not, maybe it's in a, now it's gone.
There it goes.
All right, thank you. Well, now we'll open it up to public comment. And again, I want to thank you all staff for doing a tremendous job.
This is the moderator. We've opened that Q&A panel. If you'd like to comment on this item, please click on that Q&A icon on your screen, type comment into the text field, and submit that to our panelists, or utilize that hand raise feature. Not seeing any requests for comment. Would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
Thank you. Now for the next, I think Jessica's going to provide the next report on outreach and possibly on strategic plan, but we'll do outreach.
So the outreach one is pretty short numbers, but I provided you just an update on the association meetings. I continue to meet with CARVDA on a monthly basis, and Kathy, you've already shared that we're going to be going to, or participating in the CVMA Board of Governors meeting on Friday. We were planning on doing that in person, and then they offered the virtual option, and so we will be participating virtually on Friday. The newsletter has launched. So the goal was to launch that prior to January 1, because we put quite a bit of information in there about the Sunset Bill, and I wrote a lot of how that applies to our specific licensees and to consumers and to shelters. But since we weren't able to get that out prior to January 1, what we did is I took snippets from the newsletter and we released it in December through our listserv and through our social media and websites. And so that went out prior to January 1. And then we provided the newsletter that had quite a bit of information in there. I think it had more information than it'll typically have going forward. It's just we hadn't done it in so long and there was so much information to provide. But my goal is to be able to do this at least quarterly for our stakeholders and for all of you. So we're really excited that we were able to launch it, and we welcome any feedback for that newsletter. And then the other update that I had was for the AAVSB collaboration. That was one of our remaining strategic plan objectives that we were working on, and I had just mentioned that the edits that we had made to the bylaws to fulfill that. So right now, the only remaining outreach strategic plan objective left is to do the law webinar, which we're working on right now. So all of the strategic plan objectives will be completed within this year. So it's really good improvement. Dr. Nunez, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that newsletter was fabulous. I don't know if it was a newsletter or a sunset review report. It was so thorough. And the webinar that you just referred to, that's for the controlled substance or the FDA, the controlled substance?
No, so the one webinar we're working on is right now, our priority one that we're working with Dr. Bradbury and Maria Sperber on is to convert the law exam into a webinar and be able to provide it on our website to allow for anybody to take. So that's our the last objective left in our strategic plan for outreach. And then once we do that, there's a number of other continuing education courses that we want to create and provide to our licensees.
There was one with the DEA about logging and things like that for controlled substances. Is that right? Or no?
I'm sorry, you cut off. Can you repeat that for me?
Oh, I think one of the future projects is a presentation in collaboration with the FDA in regards to controlled substances. I mean, not the FDA, the DEA.
Yeah.
In regards to
the
substances.
DEA. Yes, and I have been in communication with them. I think I reported at a prior meeting that I attended one of their continuing education events that they did on the East Coast, and I've asked for them to collaborate with us to provide something similar for California. And so that is in the works as well. So I hope to launch that this year.
Do you think we can call them the Mark Nunez Continuing Education Series, maybe? I'm being silly this meeting. I'm sorry.
You're always silly. Thank you, Jessica. I just wanted to say this newsletter was, I agree with Mark, fabulous. And I think super timely. Probably the beginning of every year is critical to get something like this out so we can inform all the licensees of the new laws that reflect or affect the profession. And of course, there were so many things in Sunset Review that this was a very good summary of it. And I wanted to make sure, I think you said this. This is emailed to all our licensees, everyone that we have email addresses for, in addition to the stakeholders, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, good work. I know they're very hard to do, these newsletters, and you guys did a very good job. So thank you. Anyone else have questions for Jessica on outreach? One of my cats, one of my cats seems to have some questions right now. Sorry. Okay, thank you. Well, then I guess we can go to public comment right now, and then we'll go to the last report, which is the strategic plan.
This is the moderator. We've opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to comment on the outreach report, use that Q&A icon and send your request that way, or you can click on that hand icon and raise your hand. I'm not seeing any requests. Would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, thank you.
It is closed.
Thank you. And now the last report would be, I think it's the strategic plan, where you've provided us that excellent document again with all the updates.
Yep. So members, we just, my team updated the strategic plan objective tracker, and that's linked in your materials. And as you see, we're really on target to completing the strategic plan early. I think that this is actually something that we'd be able to complete this year. If so, the board may want to consider doing a strategic plan session sooner than originally planned, just so we can start on the new priorities of the board. I'd hate for us to spend a year without a clear strategic plan and objectives for my team. And if we are able to do this sooner than planned, then I think that's better for everybody. But if you guys have any questions regarding the strategic plan objective tracker, please let me know.
Not seeing any hands, but I think that's a great idea. And I'm very proud. I've been on the board for a number of years, and we've never really completed a strategic plan in advance. But it's a good idea to reassess as things are changing so dramatically. Who would have known when we did it that we'd be in the middle of COVID for 2 or 3 years? So I think that's a great idea, Jessica. So thank you. Anyone else have any questions? All right, I guess we're going to public comment once again.
All right, we've again opened that Q&A panel. If you'd like to comment on this portion of the report, click on the Q&A icon, type comment into the text field, and submit that to our panelists. Or locate that hand raise icon next to your name and raise your hand. Not seeing any requests. Would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, thank you.
It is closed.
Thank you. And I know Mark's being silly, but I also want to thank one of my parrots, Martha, for being very agreeably quiet throughout these last couple of days during this meeting. She's usually quite vocal, and she's been helpful. So thanks, Martha. Now she'll start screaming. I think the next item is future agenda items and the next meeting dates. And I just want to make sure we include any agenda items that we had potentially discussed, so that we can have a comprehensive list.
So members, just like for the MDC meeting, we're starting to track any future agenda items that's requested by board members or what they want to add at the stakeholders' request. And so for future meetings, you'll see a running list of items and some estimated meeting schedules, just so for full transparency, if anyone is wanting to know the status of that agenda item and when we plan on tackling it, you can see it here. Obviously, this list can grow as members add more items on. And when the MDC is ready to do it. So with that, I know that we are going to, as Ms. Buller had pointed out, we're going to have the equine practice issue on the future agenda item, so that'll be added. We provided the meeting dates, and so if anyone has any additional items, please let us know.
Dr. Noland.
Yesterday to add another item to the MDC plate. Will that be put on the plate as well as far as looking at current regulations?
Yeah, so
care?
yeah, so what we'll do is we add it to the MDC for when they're going to have it and estimate how many meetings they'll have, and then that'll show that'll then translate to the estimated meeting time for when the board will take it, because they're going to be a meeting behind the MDC. So when you look at what's posted right now, you see the RVT educational programs on. That's not going to be heard until the board until October is the plan, and that's because it's estimated the MDC is going to spend at least 2 meetings discussing it. So that's kind of how we see that plan. As you guys send things to the MDC will spend that many days, meeting dates discussing it, and then you'll start seeing it on the estimated meeting schedule for the board.
Okay, and I'm trying not to say too much so that the meetings don't last forever, but I just wanted to congratulate Jessica and her whole team on the strategic planning and how well it's gone. So excellent job, really impressed. Oh, and one more thing, if there is a need for another board member to be involved in the meetings that the CVMA indicated they were interested in as far as equine practice, I'm happy to help. So if there's a need.
Great. Dr. Bradbury.
Yeah, thank you. So I wanted to propose starting discussions regarding and around the practice of holistic medicine. I've had a few consumers that have expressed concern to me about certain aspects of that, and I think that there's some challenges when we receive complaints about holistic medicine, because it's not really part of what our Practice Act has looked at and what are the standards of care. And so I just wondered, I don't know if this is something others are concerned about, but I wanted to put it out there as a possible item for us to start looking at in terms of just making sure the public's protected.
Dr. Nunez.
Your input into the equine issue will be valuable. I'll never forget the time during your lunch break, you went out and rescued a group of horses from an island over your lunch break. Very impressive.
I don't see Jessica was, and those I am frantically looking because I had notes from yesterday about potential future agenda items, but a cat or a dog stole them from the table here. So I just want to make sure we've included everything that was considered or discussed. And I know you've taken better notes than I have.
Well, I think a lot of the discussion about future agenda items more related to the MDC and what we wanted the MDC to be tasked with. But to my knowledge, the only one that we wanted this board to do was after the public comment yesterday.
All right, great.
We just put a lot on Dr. Sullivan's plate this meeting. That's all we did.
Dr. Sullivan, but he's retired, right? Or
he has all the time in the world. Yeah, he can do it.
Good time. I did have a question about the future board meeting dates, because one of the concerns was making sure we could sync it with the CVMA Board of Governors meetings. And are we now, I'm not looking at the days of the week here, are we now going to move permanently to a Wednesday, Thursday situation? And are their board meetings always on Fridays?
Yeah, so as you may recall from the last meeting, we recognized that our meetings directly overlapped with the CVMA Board of Governors meetings, which was not beneficial for us or for CVMA, because we provide the presentations to CVMA, and we think it's really important for us to be able to participate in each of our meetings. And so the board had requested to move it to Wednesday, Thursday meetings, but we wanted to make sure that the MDC was not negatively impacted with that change. And so we had tentatively moved it with the thought that I was going to reach out to all the MDC members and make sure they were okay with it, which I did do the day of that board meeting when we were discussing it, and they confirmed that there's no issues, and so it's final now. So they're now Wednesday, Thursdays, April, July, and October, and then the CVMA Board of Governors meeting are the following Friday. So we shouldn't have any overlap issues with their meetings.
Oops. All right. That's great. Any board members have any input on the future meeting dates?
I just had a comment. I wanted to remind us that we're not moving to those dates. We're returning to those dates.
Yes, that is true. We're returning to those original days. Good point. I think at this point, we open this to public comment at this point too. So moderator, if you could do that, that would be great.
This is our last public comment session. If you'd like to comment on this item, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type comment into the text field, and submit that to our panelists. Or you may also raise your hand by clicking on that hand raise icon. Okay, I'm not seeing any requests for comment. Would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. It is closed.
Thank you. And at this point, I believe we're at the point in the agenda where we need to recess the open session and convene a closed session. At which point, after we finish that, we will go back into open session again in order to adjourn. But just to let people know, I don't believe there's anything there's nothing public, no more considerations from the board in the public session at this point, right, Jessica?
Right, and we will not be broadcasting adjournment, just so everybody watching the webcast knows.
Okay.
That once we go into closed session, that will be it for the public participation.
All right. Well, thank you very much, public, and for the folks that stayed on today. And we'll now adjourn the public session and move into closed session, or recess public session, I suppose. I'll get this right.
And this is the moderator. And just to confirm, only Jeff will be the only staff, along with Tara, staying in closed session. Jessica, will you also be?
Actually, Shelley, it's going to be me and Rob as well, because we're dealing with the stipulated settlement as well.
Okay. So let me transfer presenter role to Jeff.